here in the press area at Wembley with former editor of Rugby World, Paul Morgan, typing away on his laptop, joining me here to discuss the fantastic victory for Wales last night. You being a man from West Wales, just quite how much did you enjoy that and how did you see the game, Paul?
Well, having spent so much time in England and I suppose over the years covered so many England tours and got to know the England players so well, I don't really ever enjoy an England-Wales game because my loyalties are so divided. It's very, very difficult night for me, and I found it one of the most emotional I think I've ever encountered. It was an incredible atmosphere, and after the game I literally just sat in my seat and felt very, very drained. But it was a fantastic occasion for rugby. I gather we were up in the maybe 12 million people watching it on ITV, which is fantastic news as well for the game. So incredible spectacle. Thumbs up for rugby, but leaves England in a really difficult position.
And that brings me on to my next question, which is the big game looming next Saturday, and particularly so for the White Rose, England versus Australia. How do you see it?
England now will be massive underdogs for that game, which may well suit them. And I would think back to 2007. That's the place I would go.
France 2011 as well, of course, lost 2 games in the pool and lost to Tonga.
Definitely. I mean, I think they came in 2007. I was there in the Stade de France to see them get absolutely hammered by the Springboks, and then go to
36-0 it was.
And go to Marseille and pull off one of the great World Cup victories, and England are well capable of doing that. I think if this game was in Dunedin or Melbourne or anywhere else in the world, I wouldn't give England much of a chance, but at Twickenham they've got a chance. And the reality is 65 minutes. I pretty much saw they wrap that game up last night, and obviously it went away from them in that last 10 or 12. But they shouldn't really fear Australia. They certainly got a very good record against them. Beat them the last time they were at Twickenham. So there's no reason why England shouldn't go in with confidence. And of course, they will absolutely love being the underdogs.
It's interesting that you mention England as underdogs. Who do you think should be the man to lead them in that key position of the number 10 slot? Lead these potential underdogs to what would be a superb recovery by beating Australia? Farrell or Ford, which way do you go?
I just don't think England can make another U-turn, so I think they have to stick with Farrell. If Jonathan Joseph's fit, he comes back in immediately. If he's not, I think their only choice is to go with the same 10, 12, 13 as they played against Wales, because up to 60, 65 minutes it was going quite well. I'm a massive George Ford fan, but I really don't think England can change again. World Cups are a lot about continuity. The way they trained last week, they need to train again this week. And if they change it all again, they'll be back to the way they trained 2 weeks ago. So I think, being pragmatic, there's no choice for them. They have to stick with what they had against Wales.
And who are the key threats they've got to stop from Australia, in your opinion? There's quite a few, isn't there?
The problem is they come from everywhere. But what we do know is that their key threat is not their front five. So that is where England can get it. That's what.
Also, in 2007, they completely won the game on that scrum. Could you see that happening again?
Well, England's scrum was really good last night. I think both Joe Marler and Dan Cole scrummed really, really well. Obviously, the second rows were doing a great job. So I think that is the one area they can get an edge, because a lot of top flight sport is about psychology, and they absolutely can get a psychological edge on Australia in that area. But if Australia get any ball, well, I don't need to tell anyone else how much or what their backs can do. They could tear anyone apart. If they get enough ball against the All Blacks, they'll beat them too. So that's the thing for England. They've got to keep it in that front five, and they've got to keep it tight, and they've got to win enough ball for Owen Farrell to kick them over the line.
And obviously we must also give credit to Wales for pulling off a superb victory, but they have to go and play Fiji, and they're missing 3 lines: Rhys Webb, Jonathan Davis and Lee Halfpenny before this tournament, obviously very well documented. Then Hal Amos and Scott Williams most probably out. George North is going to be playing centre now almost certainly. So we've seen with the England game that Fiji can really push even the best teams, and they've only got a 5-day turnaround. How do you see that one?
I mean, I can't really see any other scenario than a Wales victory. I think they're at home again. That will be the decisive thing. They will shape up, and as you mentioned, George North in the centre is not the worst ever. Him and Jamie Roberts in the centre, that's a pretty good combo for me. So I think Wales will win that, and I think England's only chance is to beat Australia, because I don't think Wales are going to mess up against Fiji. Whether they can beat Australia themselves a week later is another matter, but many people were saying as soon as this draw was made, this was going to end up with each of the top 3 teams winning one game against one another, and we could see exactly that again. So it's still, for me, could come down to bonus points, or if 2 teams are on level pegging, of course, it's going to come down to the matchup against them. And if England beat Australia, that effectively puts them 1 point above them in the table because of that. So, yeah, Wales will beat Fiji, I'm sure. And then can England beat Australia? Well, it's going to be a tough call. It's going to be a 50-50 match, really.
Finally, I'm going to have to ask you for those predictions. Wales, Fiji, Australia, England, and Wales, Australia. Who do you think will be the 2 that will go through, and who gets that top spot?
It's very difficult to say who's going to go through, but I do think Wales will beat Fiji. I think England are very, very capable of beating Australia, and as we know, Australia's record against Wales is so incredible that you would not bet against them beating them, especially because of Twickenham. So we could be sitting here, at the end of the pool stages, with all the teams having won exactly the same amount of matches, and it coming down to bonus points, and that will be, I guess, that even down to points difference, we could be looking at Manchester, England, Uruguay, however many points they can get up. So I think the pool's still wide open. I really do. I think obviously England's opportunity to win it and win it well is now gone. Can they still qualify? Absolutely, they can.
What's your prediction, though?
I think my prediction would be. It's really difficult to tell now because I don't know what Wales are going to do against Fiji. If they get a bonus point against Fiji, then that could change everything. And how well will England win against Australia if they win at all? It's very difficult to say that. I suppose all I can do in the prediction terms is go 1 week at a time. Anything else would be foolish. So my 1 week prediction is for Wales to beat Fiji and for England to beat Australia.